Good evening, and welcome to Lord Gugu's stream. Consider becoming a subscriber today to access the exclusive Stephen Sondheim Twitch emote. Tonight's performance of Musical Theater is Good, Actually, will run approximately 90 minutes with one intermission, and tonight the role of guest will be played by bingengames. Please take this time to silence your cell phones, note all emergency exits, leave your troubles outside, so life is disappointing, forget it. In here, life is beautiful. The girls are beautiful, and even the chat is beautiful. Now sit back and enjoy. Musical Theater is Good, Actually. Musical theater's good, actually. And I hope that you agree. Actually, musical theater is good. We're all in agreement. Musicals are good. In summation, I think musical theater's good actually, good actually, good actually. And here we are. That was live. That was We'll Do It live, which was why usually because I pre-recorded the last couple of those, and it's not as smooth as you're used to here. Starting a little late because of some tech hiccups of my mic is hot. Sorry. Sometimes your computer doesn't want to recognize your camera. And you have to do some sorcery. But it's fine. We have a really good show tonight. I mean, truly, when I say, like, musical theater is good, and I'm, like, really want to make the case of it's a serious fucking art form with a great fucking show to make somebody shut up, it's either going to be, like, Sweeney Todd or the show we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm very, very excited about it. And I'm very excited about my guest who DM'd me when I was first doing the show, like when I first started it with the idea for doing this episode, and they have a depth of knowledge that I'm excited to get into. So now here's the intro part that I'm going to be blatantly reading, okay? So this is like letting you in behind the curtain a bit. It's a theater term. Tonight's guest is a part of a community that I'm also proud to be a part of, that Slurp fam, Jack AM /Kate /Bug Cult crew, in addition to being a prolific murderer as seen on Jack's Thanksgiving Night Among Us stream. She also has a history in the theater and with tonight's show that we'll be discussing, and I'm excited to get into it with them. So folks, please give a warm MTIGA welcome to bingengames. Woo! All right, welcome. Looking good. Great to have you here, Bingen.
Thanks so much for having me on.
It is going to be just a really, really great show here. Not to hype it too much, but I think we're gonna change anybody's mind. I'm a little annoyed today because I was listening to the How Did This Get Made episode about cats, and Jason Mantzoukas, who's usually like my favorite on there, he was saying some real slanders about musicals. It was really tough to hear. And saying that he basically hates all musicals, but that's all right. I need to be able to hear. I want these types of people on the show.
Coming from a sitcom actor,
I know, it is a little like some of the stuff he's.
I like them both, but I'm just saying,
right.
Drawing attention to yourself.
Well, I mean, he wasn't overly hating. He was saying it's not his thing, like, and that's fine. He wasn't like denigrating people that do like it or anything. He was but it was just tough to hear. I'm excited to have you here because, besides, in the chat and stuff, what you've told me over DM and we were chatting just right before the stream, I don't know too much. So before we get into, like, the quiz, what's your like theater background? Like where do you come at theater from, and your history and all that?
Yeah, so I was really, really into musical theater from, I don't know, maybe ages 10 to 17, and like really devoted a lot of my time and energy to musical theater. Um, I think the first thing that like really caught a hold of me outside of like musical movies that I would like see on TV every now and then was like seeing Phantom of the Opera on Broadway and just getting like super obsessed and like the time that I was getting into musical theater was about the same time that the iTunes store was launching.
Okay.
And so like that just gave me an access to stuff that wasn't at the public library, wasn't um at the local record store.
Well,
So where it really like got sorry, go
no,
ahead.
no, no. I'm saying that's also the mid 2000s, like that same time that the iTunes store and all that was launching, and was a really interesting time for musical theater too. There was a lot happening. I mean, at least in the
Mhm.
mainstream. Which I mean, when you talk about musical theater, like it has to be Broadway. Like that's where they launch these things. That's where these major
Yeah.
enterprises start tend to, typically.
So like the first big thing in terms of me being actually involved was in operas and opera like shows. Just because I was, a little kid, but I had a great range. And so the first thing I probably did was A Mall and Night Visitors. I don't know
Okay.
if you're familiar. It's
I
like
don't
a
really
Christmas
know
special.
opera well at all, to be honest. But
It was like a TV Christmas special, but it's more of like an operetta sort of thing.
oh, okay.
Um,
I mean, I like a operetta. I do have a soft spot for Gilbert and Sullivan.
It's about two people, a mother and a child, who are visited by the three kings on their way to meet Jesus.
Oh,
Really, really strange. Um,
hey, there's a lot of theater. I mean, what is it but a bunch of stories, and people are always finding ways to do representation. So that's a lot of theater. I did don't know if do you know the musical Children of Eden? That's something I did in teen
yeah,
theater, which is basically the Book of Genesis, like
yeah, yeah.
as a musical.
Biblical ones are good. I've heard good ones about that one. That's I guess it's not biblical, but there was one about the Orpheus myth. It came out like a year or two ago and was really well
Oh,
received. I I
there's
feel bad not knowing the name because there's posters for it even in Charlotte.
there's the song cycle myths and hymns, which is Adam Gettle, who did Floyd Collins' Light in the Piazza. One, he's like kind of a weird a weird case, but that has some really awesome music in it, and some also
Mhm.
music that I just don't get. Kind of, I'm like,
Yeah.
so it's a mixed bag.
So yeah, from there I got like really into opera, and that's what I was like good at. Because I was really terrible at acting as a child, and just like
Oh my gosh, sorry, my phone started going off. Oh my god, just threw my phone across the room so I can't accidentally touch it. Sorry.
So I started doing all these like boy soprano opera roles in like local community theater, and eventually my voice teacher was like, "I know somebody who's looking for boy sopranos to do this role at the Met," and I was like petrified, and I'm really
Mm-hmm.
glad it never worked out. Um, it was an adaptation of Theodore Dreiser's An American Tragedy, which I
Uh,
think is like really serious and long and sad book. Uh, I've never actually read it, just what I had to understand for the audition. But I got to like stand and sing on the Met Opera stage before I ever actually got to see any shows there. Which,
that
looking
alone is
back on it, it's so weird. I
well,
didn't
but
realize it was like a big deal at the time, but it was just like
that would
That's
get you
so
the
bizarre.
bitten by the bug right there. I mean, like, I can't even imagine standing on that stage. Like, I've gotten to I got to go up. I was understudying a children's show that toured, and we also had a New York engagement for a couple of weeks at this children's theater. But it's like it's on Broadway though. It's called the New Victory Theater, and so we had like a 2 week limited engagement there. But I was just an understudy. But then the lead guy that I was understudying had
Mhm.
laryngitis and like had to go on vocal rest for like the first like week of like previews and putting it together, and it was
Mhm.
exclusively, and it was actually amazing because it was all kids. It was like kindergarten classes, and it
Mm.
was an adaptation of the book Caps for Sale. I don't know if you know that. It's a
No, I
very,
don't.
very thin to do a narrative on, but a local composer, actually my friend Bill Yanish, did the music, and he's a genius. And so it was some really beautiful music and stuff, and I had to wear this ridiculous like back brace with this stack of hats. But anyway, I bring all this whole like long story to say that standing on that stage, and it's like a 500 or so seat theater, which is still a lot, but
Mhm.
it's not like a Broadway theater, which are like a few thousand maybe or whatever. I don't know. Actually, don't know. Maybe it's like, I'm
I,
actually
I
not sure.
I can
I should
never
know that.
understand those metrics
Harrison, are you
and
in
the
the
way they
chat? You'd
relate
know
to
that.
space.
Who knows? Somebody Google it. But yeah, that was like incredible. Just like seeing the like mezzanine and the orchestra, like, and like
Mhm.
all the people, like, and they're all like, and especially with it being kids was just even cooler. So yeah, standing on, there's nothing like it, especially when it's like a legit, real deal stage. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm. But on the musical side of things, I just started doing more like school musicals and ended up going to theater camp for 5 years, which was kind of a mixed experience because, like, I was bad at acting and I was bad at dancing, and really all I could really do was sing.
Hmm.
And like when I say I was bad at acting, I like really couldn't like understand the fundamentals of like just get the line down and like be consistent
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. I think I like thought of it very I just like, you know, how do you teach a kid who just doesn't like get it and is just like confused? So even
Yeah.
though I had a lot of like really good experiences there, it was also like this very slow realization of like I'm not cut out for this
Yeah.
like the people who are like doing the
Well,
really
at least not
the
this,
important
because there's
roles.
certainly
Yeah.
a lot of far. There's a lot you can do, and you can go really far on just an incredible voice. But it's not going to
Yeah.
necessarily be musical theater because they are going to need you to, at a certain point. I mean, there might be very narrow range of roles where just
Yeah.
somebody can sing beautifully, and that's it. But it's yeah,
And the weird thing is that like later in life I actually got a little bit better at acting and sort of like understood it.
oh yeah. Well, I think it's
But it was
never.
like I started when I was like 12
Hmm.
and it was like, you know,
I mean, if you're coming at it from the wrong way, and yeah, acting to me is actually the hardest of the three in a lot of ways.
yeah, I would agree
Hey,
with that.
Megaspell. It's like it. That's the thing that I always struggle with the most. Even more than dance, which I'm not a dancer, but that's just a question of repetition, slowing it down, getting the steps, getting it in your body or whatever. But acting
Yeah.
is the hardest one. That's because that's about investing in a reality that's never going to be real. You know what I mean? It's like it's a completely just impossible task, like on its face. It's like make this fake thing feel real, and it's so that anybody. So I always say that like anybody can get even a, because I think even the greatest, Daniel Day-Lewis, Meryl Streep, whoever, have so many
Mhm.
false moments in every one of their performances, but they there is an essence, and just the briefest moments of like capturing that and losing yourself in then believing they're that part or whatever, is
And
incredible.
even if you can like regardless of if you can like unlock that like plane of like empathy or whatever, it's even a challenge, especially when you're a kid, to just like be normal. Like say these lines normal, put them in your head, and then say them normally as if somebody was saying them. You don't have to feel anything about it, but just like be normal. And for a lot of those kids, it's like this is not going to work.
And it gives you a real appreciation for when you do see a good child acting performance. Like you're
Yeah,
like, that's
absolutely.
both a really talented kid and really talented adults that are working with the kids, because you know it's like not the kids themselves. So however they're getting whether it's the director or what, like however they're getting that is pretty awesome. But anyway, so when did you peter out of doing theater? And then we'll get into the quiz and get your takes.
I think my last summer of theater camp, probably I was 16 or 17 years old. I think probably 16. I'd have to look back at things to figure out exactly. I kept doing musical theater with my high school during that time, but
that's like a fun
those
social thing.
experiences kind of just confirmed that I wasn't really good at acting at that point. And since I had to like see those people for the rest of the year, and it just like kind of felt like I wasn't really getting anywhere with that. But as I was doing that, I started doing theater tech, I think in my sophomore year of high school. And by the end of that, I had basically switched to tech entirely. Even though I wasn't like great at it, I liked the sort of camaraderie and how.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon.
It's difficult, but it's like
that's not an uncommon path.
It doesn't have the same stress.
I know lots of people that it was the same sort of thing where they started trying to perform a bit, and then but they realize that maybe being on the stage isn't necessarily where they want to be, but they're drawn to it. They're drawn to the world, and it takes so many people. Like I've said this on the show before, but and it's something I say a lot, but it's like that any theater ever happens, that this tiniest like elementary school play or whatever, or community theater or church basement, like whatever it is, like that any of that happens is incredible. And it takes all those people working together to try to create this thing that's going to just be for that moment, that as long as it's happening, and then it's done, and then it's over. And that's crazy. And also, I think, good, actually. So,
I would agree.
Without further ado, let's get to this quiz, which actually, let me get this sized correctly before I bring it on here. Okay, so it is time, once again, for the musical quiz. We're going to take your temperature here, see where you're coming from now with a... Gosh, my hair is doing the weirdest shit. It's the headphones. Okay, sorry. Vanity done. So we're going to see what your current opinions on musicals are and all that kind of thing. So just from the most basic point here, just to see where we're coming from now, what statement do you agree with more, Bingen? Musical theater is the pinnacle of human achievement as the purest and most complete synthesis of all art and performance, or musical theater is an abomination before God and man and destroying us as a society and a human race. Which do you find is more true, in your opinion?
The first one?
Okay, good answer. You are allowed to say
I thought there would be more than two.
No.
You started the question, but
nope,
I guess...
it's one or the other. We really try to force people into agreeing with number one, which, as I will say every time, is an opinion I hold unironically. That is truly what I feel deep in my heart about the art form of musical theater, because I really do, at least for the potential of it, that it falls short of that potential and those ideals, but I think it has the potential to really create something transcendent, because it's an art form that asks the audience to just to do the tiniest bit of work, which is just suspend the disbelief, and then if you allow that, and then the shows that earn that, you can get something really good.
Yeah, and also you can like pause movies and books.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a big deal.
So you're saying that's a point against theater?
No, I'm saying it's a point towards.
Right.
That,
Yeah,
like, it's going to be more transcendent.
It's an experience. It's something that you're sharing.
Yeah.
That it's like you are live. Like that is, it never stops being cool. Like I haven't really seen many Broadway shows. I think I've seen less than 10 in my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't. My first one was in 2002, I think, when I went for a high school trip. But each time, just like being out there in the audience and being like, that's like that live exchange. Like, there's nothing like it. It's really cool.
Even if it's a bad show.
Yeah. Right. It's seeing somebody that like giving their all. Yeah. Even when the show's bad, and I found that when I've been in shows that I know are turds or whatever, which is all of them. No, I'm just kidding. Who am I kidding? No directors are watching this. No DC directors are watching this. I can talk all the shit I want. No, I'm just kidding. But you learn a lot from doing shows even that aren't good, and just trying to get as much good as you can out of them, and just like doing the best at what your part is. And then sometimes you like, I've also had the experience where I go too far and I'm like, this show is bad and I have to, and it's like you can only do so much. Just do your thing. And that's an important thing to learn. I'm sorry, I'm talking way too much, Bingen. I'm gonna try
It's okay.
I'm gonna try to be better about that here, as we go to question number 2. What's your musical theater archetype? So, like, if you were a character in a musical, would you be the ingenue, the villain, the sidekick / friend, the character actor / comic relief / old, or other? Specify. Just there's all kinds that I left out there.
Probably sidekick or friend.
Okay. You like that's. It's such a consistent kind of role in shows, and I think it's because you can't do shows on solos alone. Like you tend to, that's boring.
The subplots are often the best parts.
Well, and the show we're talking about tonight has a lot of subplots, and different versions of subplots and things. We're going to talk about the movie and the stage show as well. So, it's tough to get the balance of either you do all ensemble piece, no lead. Then, like, if you do, like, you are making a choice to have a protagonist or a couple of protagonists, maybe. How you balance, it's such a delicate thing, because a song is time, and I actually felt that watching the stage show of Cabaret with a couple of those songs where I'm like, this feels a little unnecessary. This feels like so yeah, it's but you also want to give everybody their own music, like their own inner life, right? Which is kind of like what those songs are.
I think it works best when you keep it on like a lower scale, like less than, I don't know, 5 non-lead important characters. I was just thinking as you were describing that, like most of like the side quests in a video game are boring and trite, but you do appreciate when you get one in there. It takes, like, I don't know, like the Witcher Bloody Baron one, or one of those story-based things where you're like, oh, this is actually contributing a lot.
Right. Well, or it's filling out, like,
there's more than
it's filling out the world. It's like doing something. It's giving you further context or something. Yeah, rather than just being, fetch quest, go get the thing, bring it back, and it's kill the guy.
I think that's especially relevant for Cabaret, since like the 2 leads are people who've literally like come to a new environment,
right?
And then all the other characters are natives,
Right, and it's kind of about them and the world and the people around them, and that changing, and how they observe that and experience that, I guess. Anyway, we can't get ahead. We can't get to the show yet. It's not that time. We have to keep this organized. No, it's fine. It's okay.
Formatting is
pretty sure this happens every time where I'm like, because it's the musical I have on my mind, because I literally watched the stage show through means that was a man came and he it was a wizard, and he summoned a vision that I had of the show. Anyway, so I just watched it, so it's fresh in my mind, and that's always the case when I'm doing this. So I always jump ahead and start talking about the show. But how do you now presently musical theater? So like, you obviously have this history with it. How often are you compelled to engage with musical theater, listen to it, watch it, when you could go see it, like, or do you not? How do you today engage with musical theater?
Not very often. I guess, like, in anticipation of doing this, I had like re-listened to some of the soundtrack recordings for Cabaret, but otherwise I hadn't thought about it in quite a while. It's just always been the one that, like, when people ask me like, oh, what musicals are good, it's the first thing that comes to mind. You mentioned Sweeney Todd earlier, and out of curiosity, I rewatched the movie adaptation from, like, I don't know, it's like 2007 or something.
Yes, I think so. What was your opinion on that?
I don't know, it was kind of mixed, because it was like one of those things where, like, when you see it as a kid, you really like it, but once you get some distance from it, you start to realize, like, oh, this is really stupid, or you get cynical about it. And then when you come back to it later, you like, okay, this has its flaws, but is still pretty compelling. That's kind of how my relationship with Titanic that happened over the summer during
the movie, right? Not the musical.
Yeah.
Okay. There is Titanic the musical.
I know about that, but I haven't really looked too deep into it.
I think we'll do it one day. We'll do like a charity stream with Kate watching Titanic the musical. I'm volunteering her for that. I don't know when. That'll just be at some point.
I think she started watching it on the last.
Oh yeah, no.
Back. I didn't watch the whole thing.
It was on her birthday stream. Jack, I sent it. And Jack I was like, start it from here, and he like skipped ahead, like right when it was about to get funny, and then he skipped to like the most annoying part of the opening, which is also funny. But then that was when Jack started singing the Wikipedia page for like 9/11 and stuff, because he was like, that's what it sounded like. They were just singing Wikipedia pages for the disasters.
So I haven't seen like a live theater performance, I think, since I lived in New York a couple years ago. I worked at a La Mama Experimental Theater Club.
Okay.
It's like
Where's
a small independent theater in the. It's in Manhattan. It's like, I don't know, kind of like Lower Village or Chinatown. I don't remember what the names of the.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
are anymore.
I didn't. I
could tell you
I don't either, so I don't know why I asked. I'd be like, oh, okay. If you would have been like,
no wait,
Tribeca, I would have been like, oh, okay.
East 4th Street. It's
Okay.
the name of the street is. There's like one of those plaques where it still has the number name, but they have a special name, and it's like named for one of the people who started the theater. That was the last time I was going to performances regularly, and I really like that.
It sounds like the type of thing that did David Bowie. I mean, not David Bowie, or maybe David Bowie, but did David Byrne ever go see a show there? It sounds like something he would have liked.
It's quite possible. Like a lot of like prominent musicians and like artists did shows there, especially in the 80s.
A theater recommendation for everybody, because it definitely is theater. If you have HBO Max or whatever, the American Utopia I don't know if I've recommended it explicitly on the stream
I think
yet.
I've heard of that, but I haven't actually looked into it.
I was very, very, very moved by it. I love Stop Making Sense as well, and it is its own thing. Which is awesome. And even though it is a little bit like a boomer engaging with how the world is fucked up, he's very earnest about it and not too like. It's not, the lib politics aren't too bad. It's pretty good. And like the entire ensemble is just amazing. The two dancers, oh my god. The one dancer who looks like Matt Walsh from the UCB4. The two backup dancers are incredible. Sorry. That's
I'm struggling to think of the last show I thought. I think it might have been Sleep No More.
Oh, okay.
And I hated it.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that even like really counts. I mean, it's
no, that is theater. No, that's environmental, kind of experimental theater. Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, so with your, I guess, with your limited range, I guess, of shows that you still think are good, or maybe that you still are engaged or like interested in revisiting and seeing, what musicals do you think should be more popular / beloved, and which should be less popular?
That's a good question. Well, would you be offended if I brought up a list of musicals?
Are you just like Googling list of musicals?
List of Broadway musicals.
I mean, there's a lot. That's gonna be.
I know.
There have been quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Here's one that I think it should be viewed as not good. And
okay.
I have to admit I'm a little bit biased. So, when I was in a theater camp, there were like pianos in a lot of the spaces, obviously. And all fucking nerdy kids want to show off that they could like play piano and sing at the same time, and they would all gather around the piano and sing together. And probably the most common song that they sang together was what is it called? 525,000.
Oh yeah, Seasons of Love.
Seasons of Love. Okay.
Right.
And I was just so, Rent was so popular at that time, and
you were either on the Rent train or not.
Yeah, and I remember like liking those songs at the time, but when I revisited it later, like my sister's high school did it for her senior year musical like 2 years ago or so. And just looking back on it, I just think it's settings wise, it's just like a huge mess. There was like a really good Lindsay Ellis video about this, about how it just comes off as like weird and like unfair and just like kind of pushing these characters into these weird stereotypes.
Mm-hmm. There's a part that the drive, the like desire to make it such an ensemble that is like brought together and like fused in this like thing, which could be great. Like that, I'm not opposed to like that thing, but yeah, it seems more doing that through like a plot contrivance kind of thing, and that's like. And that's where it kind of falls short, because it's like, yeah, like characters like Benny or whatever who are like ruining their lives, and then like there's like all these kind of, and then like the classic example I think is this song actually, Happy New Year, which is like them all having a fight, and it's like those kind of songs to me are very funny, where they're like, Mimi's got a baggage to say to you, like that kind of like fighting. Sorry,
No,
Alex.
I think a lot of
Whenever
it
you watch this, Alex,
is
I'm sorry.
funny.
Mhm.
But the thing is, that it's funny in the way that you can kind of tell that whatever like people or peoples these characters were based on, I don't think the writer, I forget his name, like really had
Yeah,
a
Jonathan Larson.
really had a true understanding of. And I remember when I saw it, like the part that aged the worst, in my opinion, is like at the very end of the musical, like the character that's like implied to be like a trans woman or a drag queen or something of the line, she like basically they like as they're dying are just like, oh, I'm a magical gay and I'm absolving you of all your sins. It's like incredibly weird.
Right, the ending is the thing I hate the most about it. Is Mimi should die.
It's literally like
Mimi should die, and like, yeah, her coming back to because she saw the the Hispanic like trans character that
Angel, I think.
Angel has to die, obviously, of their AIDS, and so that we make the
It's like,
older
I
like
died,
actor,
so-
the character of color, Tom Collins has to be the one to suffer and bear that. But the white, well, I guess, and Mimi isn't white, to be fair. But the white man, though, he gets his girlfriend back.
It's
The
less
white man
about like
rock star.
the identity things and more just like, okay, somebody died, and so you just put another coin into the arcade machine, and now one of the other ones springs back.
Right.
It's like it's just such lazy.
Yeah, it just kind of is like,
Awkward.
we need a happy ending now. And I think that even like a song that I like a lot in that show, or I did like, is kind of like the the one that Mark and Roger sing at the end. Harrison, what's it called? I can't think of it. I can think of the first lyrics of it. You're what you own, right? Because it's rent, and then this is what you own, and it's like that is kind of like musicals, like just being like, okay, this is we're learning now, this is the lesson, and it's like towards the end. Yeah, first draft show. I mean, I say this about Rent, that I think that there was a lot, like, he died in previews, just freak death, like the composer. So I don't know if they were probably a little precious about like changing it, and maybe if it had the chance to really develop and stay in previews or whatever, that they could have. But like, I also, can't argue with success. I mean, it still sells. So is there any show that you can think of, though, that like when you were doing, or like a show you remember doing, that might be a little obscure or something, or that you would listen to, that you really liked but doesn't get done much?
So the thing is, like, ones that I remember fondly from like being a teenager really into theater, I'm not sure if they're actually good, and I haven't really re-listened to them or rewatched them. But I remember the ones, and this was just because I was like a very emotional teenager. The ones that I really liked were like Jekyll and Hyde, and
Which
one
we watched on stream, and I rediscovered, because I liked that a lot as a high schooler, but I also was like, but I'm a bit of an elitist about Frank Wildhorn, who I think is kind of a hack, even though I like some of his songs. I just think he's really bad at having songs that are like one idea repeated for 6 verses or whatever, and like it's the same, and it's like it doesn't need to exist. But rewatching it, and with David Hasselhoff, who I said is the perfect star for like the level of quality of the show, I was like,
Yeah.
this is good, actually. We enjoyed it a lot more than we thought. And then we watched Repo the Genetic Opera, and it fucking sucked.
Really, I've never seen that. I've heard
Don't.
about
It's
it,
not fun. It's bad. People that were like, it's a cult favorite, it's good, you're wrong. And movie fucking sucks. Sorry.
Okay, here's one that's actually a little bit more obscure. So there was like a musical off Broadway done by a band called Groove Lily. which
Mm-hmm.
is like drummer, I think one pianist and a singer. And I only knew about this. It was a very brief running thing from what I remember, because the drummer in the band was the uncle of my brother's best friend. And so we all ended up going to this, and it's like a musical where basically it's about the little match girl,
Oh, okay. This sounds
sort of about
sort of familiar.
this guy
Vaguely.
who is uh, not very grateful or very helpful, and is kind of self-absorbed. And over the course of the musical, like it's she's selling light bulbs instead of matches in this
Oh.
version, as it takes place in the modern day. And it's like a
Wait.
Christmas musical, and it's really silly and corny, but it's been a tradition to listen to it every year in my family at Christmas time.
What's it called again?
Striking 12.
I have heard of
Like,
Striking
Clock
12.
Striking 12.
I've heard
Yeah.
of. I have never listened to it, but I've definitely have heard that name. I've heard of Striking 12.
It's a little cheesy, but
No,
it's
I mean,
also very cute.
all musical theater is a little
and has
cheesy.
some really good music.
Yeah, the show that I was doing when COVID hit and I had to close was this little 4-person and a piano piece that's like two parallel stories that briefly intersect at a couple points kind of thing, and it's all about like being in New York and like all this stuff. When you like tell me what the show's about and even like listen to like or think about some of the lyrics, stuff like that, I'm like, this is corny and silly. But then when you like experience it and you like do it, it's like, nah, it still gets me. It'll still get me. All right. Final question of the musical quiz. In the musical of your life, what are you singing as your 11 o'clock number? So, like, the culmination of your story told in a musical, what's your 11 o'clock number you're singing?
Should it be from a musical or just any
No,
song?
it doesn't have to be for musical. It can be any song. It can be even like a song that would be like this or something. It doesn't even have to be a song that exists.
Okay, I'm gonna pick a song that exists that I have just like only recently started listening to a lot. Which it's not really a culmination song. It's more of like a, what do you call it when like after the climax things are sort of settling down?
Denouement.
Moi, yeah. It's Both Sides Now by Judy Collins.
Denouement, also the name of a French jeans company. Denouement. Sorry.
I don't know if I've heard it before. It was like originally written by Joni Mitchell, but I heard it because it was at the end of the movie Hereditary.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
like this really calm, soothing, like these like descending strings, like, and the melody is like Judy Collins singing like basically like, I've known all these things in my life, but I didn't really understand them. I just thought I understood them.
Right.
And so kind of the thesis is like, I've lived through life, I've lived through love.
Oh, is
I've
this Both
seen
Sides Now?
clouds. Yeah.
Both Sides Now, yeah. That's a great song. I mean, Joni Mitchell. She can write a tune, right?
I like the Judy Collins version better, which
That's
is
fine.
the one that came out first and is more popular, but
Well,
she did write it.
As
Mitchell did.
as a fan of musical theater, I'm quick to first celebrate the composer, lyricist. Because that's one of the beautiful things about musicals, and we'll talk about it with the two versions of the story, the musical that we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes. I think we're gonna go to just a quick break so I can just get a little more water here and stuff. But okay, so in classic theater, the time is currently 8:58. So we're gonna take a 5, and so everybody be back at 9:03. And now you say thank you 5.
Thank you, 5.
There you go. All right, that's me being a stage manager. So we'll be right back. back. We're back. 903. I run a tight ship. I'm a good stage manager. I'm doing all the tech. I'm doing it all here. So I'm just really proud of myself. I'm just gonna... All right. Sorry. So Bingen, Cabaret. You came to me. You DM'd me. Slid into my DMs to propose coming along to talk about this show because you just have a really deep connection to the show. Oh my god! I'm just knocking into things on my desk here. Everything's fine. I'm just too excited to talk about Cabaret. So tell me about your history with the show. Like when did you first come to it? And yeah, just tell me about Cabaret.
Yeah, so like a lot of my favorite shows, I first saw it at theater camp performed by a group of like 14 to 17-year-old children. Which might sound kind of strange for a show like this, but this was like kind of my camp's like thing is they would like get the rights to do more raunchy musicals than are usually allowed at like high schools,
Right.
and often get them like really quickly.
And what this camp was
Stage Door
Stage
Manor.
Door, right?
It's in upstate New York. It's like really expensive and really silly, and it's like a place where a lot of Broadway and like Hollywood big shots will, dump their kids.
It also reminds me that I tweeted something, and I have to get it ready. That because Stage Door Manor reminds me of the movie Camp, which I'm sure you've seen.
That's what it's based on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will say, I loved that movie when it came out, even though I knew it wasn't good. I was like 18. I was like going into I was so into musical theater at that time. I loved that movie, and I think that the original music in it is actually pretty good. And then this number that I do actually, I'll just play it now. Yeah. Okay. Here, I'm going to get this ready. Actually, I'm going to go to break for just a minute just to get this set up, everybody, and also because I realized that I did the classic Bobby mistake. This is a classic Bobby mistake. Poured myself the glass of water, refilled the pitcher, left the glass of water in the kitchen. Do it at least once a day. So I'm going to fix that. We're going to come back. We're going to watch Turkey Lurkey Time from camp in celebration of the holiday season being rung in. And it's a recreation of the original choreography too. And they really performed the fuck out of it. So it's actually insanely good. So I'm going to get that
movie in like 15 years.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it in a very long time either, and I'm excited to revisit. But I just remember this number, them just killing it. So I'm excited to watch that, and then we will launch into the rest of this conversation of Cabaret. So sorry for this false start here, but it's going to be worth it. Give me 2 minutes, real quick. Okay. All right, everybody, we're back. Trust me, this was worth it. So this is originally from the musical Promises, which, fine. Really nothing remarkable, I think, about that musical that I can think of besides this number itself. So
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I don't really know anything about it. Well, enjoy... enjoy this.
It's turkey lurkey time. Tom Turkey ran away, but he just came home. It's turkey lurkey time. He's really home to stay, never want to roam. Let's make a wish and we all our wishes come true. A snowy, blowy Christmas, a mistletoe-y Christmas, a turkey lurkey Christmas to you. A turkey lurkey Christmas to you. It's Goosey Poosey time. She was a gadabout, but she's back again.
I mean, I think this is pretty self-explanatory in terms of what's happening and what it's about. It's pretty clear. And you know, just everybody get in the mood of the season, and everybody have a loosey-goosey Christmas.
The first thing I noticed is that this is definitely like overstating the diversity of the body of campers at stage door.
And that's a plot point in the movie too, is that they're trying to do like Dream Girls but don't have enough, you know, kids of color.
That probably happened like a million times before everyone there.
So again, this is the movie Camp, which is based on a real musical, a real summer camp that Bingen went to, Stage Door Manor. A lot of young like musical theater actors did too, like famous people. I'm sure you went to camp with people that are on Broadway and stuff.
The two people I can think of is first Ansel Elgort.
Okay, Ansel Elgort
from like The Baby Driver.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen The Baby Driver. I understand that there's some allegations that have been going around.
Oh, about him, yes. Well, and also Baby Driver has a spacey factor as well.
Double. But he was actually in my like little dorm. He was a decently nice kid, just like kind of full of himself because he's like, really tall and handsome, even at like 12 years old. And then the other guy that I remember, Noah Robbins, who was in the trial of the Chicago 7, which I still haven't seen. But I remember seeing him. He did an off-Broadway production of Arcadia, the Tom Stoppard play, which is one of my favorite plays. But I hadn't like thought about it in like years, and I just saw him on the stage, and I was like, "Wait, I know this guy." But if you just like look at the wiki, it's like,
there's
it's a lot, but it's also a lot of like nepotism cases as well. It's kind of a circular
in showbiz
thing going on. But
in showbiz,
who could believe
nepotism
it?
in show business? Never. But that's, you know, that's quite a crucible then to just be like, oh, I like this, but I don't think I want to be doing this, because it's like, because it's all these people that are fucking intense and probably have like showbiz parents and all kinds of shit like that. And
a lot of them really, really, really talented.
Yes.
Like in ways that are like indescribable.
I bet that production of Cabaret was probably really, really good.
Yeah, there's actually videos of it. They're like really, really low quality, because what they would do is that they would tape all of the productions, which is 13, I think it was, for 3 weeks, and then there were 3 sessions per summer, so taping 39 musicals, and then they would sell, when the parents came to see the musicals at the end of the sessions, they would put down money to have either DVDs or VHS mailed out to them once they were finished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that.
The quality like varied a lot, but they put a lot of effort into it.
I bet you they're probably pretty good now, or when they recently. I don't think they did. Although who knows? Maybe they did.
So the one that I think was the one that I saw, I actually can't tell because of the quality of the video. Like I can't recognize any faces. But it was really bizarre seeing that. Like a lot of they had musicals that were like crude or a little sad done there. But that was the first one that I remember seeing that was like serious in a way that like resonated with me. Like you watch like The Crucible and you're like, oh, this is so intense. But it's a little bit different than like seeing something that takes place in like the last 100 years.
It's a show that it's saying a lot without, well, and I think when it's at its best, and the reason I love the movie is it's not
Mhm.
coming right out and saying it, which is very rare
Yeah.
in a musical. It's like sometimes you're like, why is this here? And then you're thinking about it, and then it makes you like recontextualize, and then you realize why it's there. Or
Yeah, and it's definitely a show that holds up to multiple viewings. Like there's been stuff even in rewatching recordings and reading and watching the movie where I've like realized this sort of like circular threads that go throughout the musical that sort of pull it together in a way that the book doesn't really
well, yeah,
make just because the book is a really long book, or it's not really long, but it's like the stuff that makes it into Cabaret is only maybe like a quarter or less of the book, and it's all embellished from there.
right.
I forgot what I was talking about.
Well, Valerie is hot. Says hi. Says hi, Bingen.
Valerie is hot.
Well, no. Tell me about. So, when did you read the book? Is that more recent that you
Yeah.
sought out the source material?
Yeah. So I think I saw the movie after I first saw the musical.
And the movie's a lot different than the stage musical.
Yeah. You know, something I just rewatched the movie today, and something I didn't realize. Like I remember watching it and being like, "Oh, this doesn't have like 2/3 of the songs in it." Like pretty much all of the music is like diegetic. Is that the word?
Right.
It's like them performing at the cabaret,
Right.
and none of the non-cabaret songs really appear.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized when I watched it today that all of the times that there's like a vinyl playing or radio on, it's the other songs that they didn't include in the musical. And that just like completely blew my mind because I hadn't watched the movie in so long.
And then, so I, just to give my background here, have never seen the stage show. I've seen the movie a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I own the movie, and I loved watching it again recently for this. I love Fosse as a figure and his part of both theater history and film history, frankly. I'm a big fan of 70s film, and I think that this is one of the very best 70s films, and I think it's like my favorite era of film, maybe. That's where I first came at it from, and I've seen that a bunch, but never saw the stage show until just before the stream when I had the wizard appear and give me that vision of the 1993 London Donmar Playhouse production of Cabaret with Alan Cumming. I think the first time he played the MC, and then and it was directed by Sam Mendes, and I'm pretty sure that production more or less transferred to Broadway. I think that's what was the 90s revival.
That's been the standard pretty much for all of the productions, including the recent one from like 2014. Like the
with Emma Stone. Yeah,
with Michelle Williams.
Oh,
Emma Stone. Unless we're thinking of different productions.
No. You're right, but Emma Stone came in later, I think, and did a stint, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking. But you're right, Michelle Williams did originate it.
But like before that 92, 93 production, there'd been a bunch of different variations in terms of which songs were included and which weren't. Like something I didn't realize until I was like reading these Wikipedia today is that maybe this time, which is like the big Liza Minnelli moment, sort of in the middle of the show as like things are all starting to seem like everything's going to work out.
It's a beautiful song, and it's really well used in.
It's a beautiful song,
film.
But it wasn't in the original show. They only dug it back up for the movie, and like two of those songs that didn't make it in the original show, but made it in the movie, have since been reintegrated, and they've dropped other songs out because
Yeah,
it
Mine
just
Hair.
makes for a more seamless show. Yeah.
Mine Hair's maybe one of maybe the most famous dance number from the show, like purely like from the movie. I should say that iconic choreography, and that was that was new, also Kender and Ebb, but new for the movie. That there's a completely different original song that was Sally's like introductory song, that it might still be in there. Might have gotten moved. I forget. Which
I
one.
think there is an original recording of the very first version, but I don't know if any of those songs have been passed down in like the recordings since then.
Well, tell
I
me.
know that the
Sorry,
Go ahead.
finish your thought. No, finish your thought.
I know that because of just like the space problems of selling a single soundtrack LP, some of the songs that were in the movie, or maybe they were recorded but never made it in the final cut, didn't end up on the soundtrack that was released. Just because the movie's like 2 hours long and
Right.
it has, maybe like 55 minutes of music at least.
I don't know. It almost sometimes feels like there's in general, both in the stage show and in the movie, long stretches of no music for a musical, to the point where sometimes you're like, well, I haven't sung in a while. Like, you actually have that thought.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing.
That's why it makes it easier. I think that's why it make it easier for the film version to only be diegetic numbers.
Yeah. And I tend to
I
not
think
be.
that's what Fosse was really good at.
Right.
Is deciding which things to keep in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think if the the Isherwood character, he's named something different in the movie, had all the songs that he has on the stage show, it would feel really weird and
Absolutely.
stilted.
Yeah, and I honestly don't like him singing in the stage show. I don't even mind the other people singing. I almost wish though that he didn't sing throughout the entire thing, and it was like him experiencing this cabaret and the cabaret starting to meld with real life, and like kind of that I would love, but I don't know about him singing sometimes. But it's it's a minor
part
point.
of that. I think part of that is in between. So in the novel, he's British, and he's
Right.
literally just the novelist. And then the original musical, they make him an American
Right.
who has more in common with Sally Bowles and is much less timid. And then in the movie,
Right.
they decided like, oh, actually that British character that was more shy and more subdued and like just works a little bit better in the narrative was the
Yeah.
way to go.
It's way more interesting.
Like I don't hate Cliff Bradshaw, and I do kind of like the like train scenes with the suitcases swapping and all that stuff. It's novel to see, but
yeah.
it's not like the pure essence of Cabaret or Weimar Berlin, the show.
What I was struck by watching the show today, and then my wife even said this, was that you spent for a show where the two lead characters are you'd assume Sally Bowles and Cliff. You don't spend that much time with them, honestly. I mean, there are the scenes, but it feels like there's just as much, if not more, time sometimes given to Fraulein Schneider and Herr Schneider and Frau. I forget the names. There's too many hairs and Frauleins, and
it's a little bit complicated.
the landlady and the landlady and the nice Jewish fruit seller.
Yeah.
Which I love.
I think
it's a sweet.
I think that pairing is great.
It's a sweet story, but you could cut one or two songs and still have all the sweetness.
Yeah.
There are entire songs that could just be a really tender moment and convey just as much. But at the same time, what I appreciated about those songs and her songs is that also the songs still felt very like 1930s German to me in a way. Like it did still kind of feel like a cabaret beer hall kind of like song, like a woman like at a piano and it's all smoky or whatever and she's like singing. I honestly really love the landlady character a lot. But yeah, actually I have some Wikipedia research up here regarding the adaptation from that stage show to the film. is there was a script which somebody Allen, what was it? Jay Allen had done a script, a treatment of like the stage show, basically. That was that it was just pretty much the stage show and then it was in the movie. And Bob Fosse basically hired my man, one of my favorite book writers of musicals, Hugh Wheeler, the man who did both Sweeney Todd and A Little Night Music. He's awesome. He's also like a poet and stuff. He's really cool. So he hired him, and Hugh Wheeler, I did not mean to make that like so proper. Hugh Wheeler was personal friends with Isherwood. And he knew that Isherwood was really not happy with the stage adaptation of the original production because he felt, he wasn't like gonna sue or anything, but he felt like it was, they say a boulderization of his material. So Hugh Wheeler, in basically doing a treatment on the script, went back to his stories and like you said, really tried to capture more of the character as he's written, as he is in the book, and also in the original production they basically took out all the gay stuff, more or less, when it originally happened. Hugh Wheeler is responsible for bringing that back from the source material and putting that more into it, and then so Fosse, like, really, like, kind of, I feel like that's saves, like, that's, and he had to, like, fight to get this movie. The movie he had done before it, Sweet Charity, was a bomb. It did not do, it was actually, like, a historic
the episode bomb. of that show that you told me about, something in Fosse, the FX show, was it?
Oh, yeah, Fosse Verdon. Did you watch
Fosse
that?
Verdon. I watched like the first 2 or 3 episodes,
which is really about. It's really about Cabaret in the early ones.
I had no idea that he did Sweet Charity, and that was one of the shows I did in high school. Well, but it was a very like sanitized version. So
that was kind of, in some ways, a show that really kind of launched him as a theater director because it was with his wife, Gwen Verdon. Although, did he do that before or after Redhead? It was like they did a couple shows together that were these like huge hits because she was such a big star. Like she was the hugest Broadway star of the time, and she was brilliant. I mean, like Damn Yankees kind of sucks, but she's awesome, and like, and you can find like old footage of her and stuff, and she's really just a brilliant performer. And so she was the original Charity, and that was why people loved it. Like the reviews for it, and it won like all the Tonys and all this, and she won. And so it was such a huge hit. And then the biggest star of the time, Shirley MacLaine, was like, "Hey, I want to be in this, but I'll only do it if Bob Fosse's the director." And so they got Bob Fosse, and they got to like do all that. But then the movie didn't work because all the reviewers were like. It was all the New York reviewers. The LA, like the Variety and Hollywood Reporter are like, "Oh, it's so wonderful, Shirley MacLaine shines," or whatever. And then the New York Times and stuff are like, "It's nothing compared to Gwen Verdon." So it's a huge bomb, and so he has to fight to get Cabaret. And it's really incredible because seeing some of the directors that they were considering for it, it was going to be like Billy Wilder or like Gene Kelly and people like that. Like that, it would have been a much more just kind of straightforward, I think, filming of the stage show, more or less. Like especially that era, because we're talking like leaving that sort of in the early 70s is such an interesting time for musicals too, because you have like Hair coming in, you have Company being like the first concept musical kind of stuff. So a lot is really in flux. And I think this is like Bob Fosse like boldly taking the show and being like, this is like both new kind of cinema and new kind of like movie musical, which nobody's really done.
A weird time for movie musicals in general, right? Like they'd kind of fallen off.
Well, they were once like the biggest sure thing. It's like yeah. But also, the challenge with musicals in general and live shows and all of them it's a lot more work. I mean, they tend to sell better. Like, you can sell it easier to a general public. They'll like to go see a musical, but it's so much more work. You have to pay a whole band. You have to pay. You have to spend that much more time rehearsing. You have to dedicate like a lot, and you need a very specific type of performer depending on what kind of musical you're doing. So, musicals are hard. But anyway, sorry. Tell me about the source material, and like sort of your take on on that, and give me your brief Cliff Notes book report.
Okay, so like I said before, like the Sally Bowles story is only one small component of it, and there's a bunch of different fleeting characters that he's like running into as he's giving these English lessons. So like one of the ones that I don't think is in the musical but makes it into this movie was the Landauer heir, the Jewish
heiress
to the department store.
Mm-hmm. With the gigolo.
Basically they kind of like take a bunch of, and I guess this was Hugh Wheeler's work, take a number of those characters and sort of merge them into composite characters. So like the Maximilian guy, the like Baron,
mm-hmm.
The moments in the book that are kind of like that do take place. Like he goes into the countryside with this I don't know, like he's not a baron, he's just like a very successful
some aristocrat, some kind of
and like goes to their garden parties and stuff like that. But that segment of the book is actually like rather boring. Like there's no sexual tension between them. It's more of this like I don't know, like philosophical debate, and Isherwood like coming to terms with the fact that a lot of these people that he has to hang out with to sort of like get by, he doesn't actually enjoy their company.
Mm-hmm.
And the Landauer arc is like also part of that. But in general, I feel like, you kind of hinted at this before. Like the Cliff Bradshaw character is not as much of a observer as kind of the source material and how it's approached in the movie. And so like something I thought was really interesting was that, so I haven't read it yet, but the play that the musical was based off of
I Am a Camera.
Yeah. And it comes from one of the opening paragraphs of the book. From my window, the deep, solemn, massive street, stellar shops where the lamps burn all day, under the shadow of top-heavy balcon facades, dirty plaster frontages, embossed with scrollwork and heraldic devices. The whole district is like this, street leading into street of houses like shabby monumental safes, crammed with the tarnished valuables and second-hand furniture of a bankrupt middle class. I am a camera with its shutter open, quite passive, recording, not thinking. Recording the man shaving at the window opposite and the woman in the kimono washing her hair. Someday, all of this will have to be developed, carefully printed, fixed.
That's awesome.
And so, like, something that disappoints me about the musical, and I think has been sort of fixed with the inclusion of the movie numbers, and as those two works have kind of fused together into something that is kind of the best of both worlds. It really focuses a lot more on class and on like the communists living in at that time than the musical does, which it still does somewhat. But I think like part of what made it interesting to read was that, like, one of the things that made Cabaret so special to me when I first saw it is I was like, I don't know, maybe like 14, 15 years old. And what you learn about Germany and the world and the lead up to World War II and the Holocaust and everything is just like so. It's such a specific cross section in terms of what they teach Americans
Right.
in school of like, oh, like anti-Semitism equals then there's going to be a Holocaust, and
Right.
there's like basically a whole decade or so of
How do you get to that
history
point?
and-
Right. It's like it didn't
Exactly.
happen overnight. And how do you really convey that? Like that's not like, yeah, you can read a whole history book about it, but are you really going to be able to emotionally connect and emotionally understand that process, I guess?
And so I guess what I think Cabaret does is like obviously there's some stuff of it that's like really not subtle at all.
Right.
Especially like I think Tomorrow Belongs to Me is like a really amazing number that totally it not only sets the tone for the second act, but like it just like really swells up behind you and surprises you because everything seems to be a little bit less serious beforehand.
Right. And that's kind of what it is in the movie too. Like that, it comes at both the stage musical and the movie. It comes at like a time of like celebration, like they're at a party or whatever, and so yeah, it's at like this really happy time, and then the people there that are at that party both times are carried into it in that same spirit of celebration, and and you see the moment happen in his name's Brian in the movie and Cliff in the stage show of you witness the moment where like the full disillusionment happens and he kind of sees where he is, which is you're right, it's really powerful.
That's one of the things that I think is important about like the really minor characters in the musical, like just like some of the men that Cliff meets at the bar, who he like runs into later at the party and whatever. It kind of like you meet all these people, and some of them seem kind of sus, and some of them seem totally fine. And when that moment finally happens, you sort of watch. Yeah, I don't know. This dark power just like kind of eclipse a room of people or a beer garden in the movie.
Right, you see how quickly
it's
lines
really
are drawn.
spooky.
Yeah, and there's a shot in the movie when they're all singing it where they cut to like this old man just in the crowd, like sitting looking distressed, and you can clearly tell that he's like an old Jewish man, and he's like sitting there, and you see like, and that's a really visceral moment of like seeing that, and how that's connected to song, and how that's connected to performance, and so. The cabaret itself is there a cabaret in the book at all? Like, or like, does he go to a bunch of cabarets? Is there one specific one?
It's mainly just the Kit Kat Club. I don't remember if that's what it's named or if it has a different name in the book. It's not as important. Like, there's longer chapters of the book where he's like going to different towns outside of Berlin and just sort of soaking things in, and then there's all the stuff with the Landauers. It only like really gets into that like scary Tomorrow Belongs to Me mode in the last few pages of the book. But you do see like, I don't know, lots of little moments of like, oh, the other day I saw so and so get beat up by someone.
Right.
But the cabaret aspect of it specifically isn't as important, even though the Sal's character is like the star for a quarter of the book.
Yeah, one moment I like in the stage show that was a little heavy-handed, but also I kind of like it, is when it's Fraulein Coast, the sort of prostitute who's sort of like the like sassy one who gives it gets into it with the landlady a lot because she's banging all these sailors in a room, and they're at this engagement party, and says, because the landlady's marrying the Jewish fruit seller, and she tosses out like, and she's like, just kind of says it, she's like, oh, the Jews have all the money or whatever, like she like kind of like like ha ha ha, like it's not anything, but it like that's what sets off everything. And it's like you see like how just like it starts small and thoughtless, like kind of like what you're saying, like these little things, and then you realize how like all those add up, or like how they like play, like how they cause and effect. Accumulation. So is the book, the general arc of it, like how I feel it is in both the show and the movie, about sort of this subtext becoming text, like this sort of like everything that's like this sort of creeping dread kind of, and how you try to like or how you miss it, or how like, because they're really, I don't know, we haven't even really gotten into Sally as well as a character. Frankly, I was saying this earlier, frankly, she's a girl boss. And you shouldn't question anything she does in this. And she's flawless, I think. No, I mean, I'm kidding, but she's actually not a sympathetic character in real life. I mean, especially in the stage show. In the stage show, she is...
That's the thing, is I think that in the stage show, they... In the confidence that they give Bradshaw,
right,
I think they make his side more sympathetic.
Right. Yes.
And
that might be more so what it is.
The final few numbers of the musical, especially the Cabaret, is like yeah, she's going through this really tragic moment, but like after you're done like crying with her, you realize that she like usually makes the right decision when it comes to commitment. Mm-hmm. Like even though she's like a messy bitch and
messy bitch who loves drama, she is definitely a messy bitch who loves drama. There is no way around it.
She knows like when. I guess maybe that's the thing that she learns over the course of the show. Mm-hmm. Is like when to finally cut things off and realize that you're getting into something that you're not prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, well, like
I think that's kind of the arc final, that I find the most compelling.
Well, I really love the final scene that she and Cliff Bryan, I'm going to call him Cliff Bryan, that she has with him, where, because so the big sort of hullabaloo of their whole story is that Sally Bowles becomes pregnant, and then Cliff Bryan says, he's already getting freaked out about Germany. He's like, let's get out of here. We can go back to America, England, wherever. I think, in the movie it's Oxford or whatever, because he's like a professor, right? Isn't that it? Or anyway.
Yeah, I think it's King's College in Cambridge. Right. Yeah, he's hoping to get a fellowship.
So he's like, we can go live in England, and she's seeming like she's going to do it. And I do love that she comes back and she's not wearing her signature look, her big fur coat, and that's
how beautiful.
Right, because she says it's the only valuable thing she owns very early on in the story. So when it's gone, you realize, oh, she's gone and paid for an abortion. Yeah. And Cliff Bryan does not take this news well. He hits her in both the film and the stage show. Which I also appreciate as a way to not appreciate it. I loved it. I mean, I appreciate the choice to not have him be overly sympathetic in that and try to.
No, I think it makes sense, and it also shows like Sally when she gets hit and like when she gets yelled at, like she's used to it. Mm-hmm.
Right, and
she talks in this way that's like both very mysterious, but also has this element of de-escalation.
Yeah,
I don't really know
because she's just trying to keep the party going. It's like that's her whole energy. Yeah. She's just chasing that party. Nothing matters. We're all just kind of whatever, bags of meat. Let's have fun, like whatever. But in that scene, I think to your point, where that. She says, he's like, we could have done this. It would have been great. And like basically saying, we could have stayed together. And she's like, you wouldn't have been happy with me. He's like, I would have for a child. And she's like, so you're saying that like you would have stayed with me for a child. And I think in the movie she directly says you'd go stepping out and blow dudes or whatever, and like, and it, you know, it'd not be a good life for us. We wouldn't be happy. And I think that she's absolutely right. But also, still, because in the movie especially, it is, I mean, and both Michael York and, of course, Liza Minnelli are just so good in it. And their relationship has just a lot of like sort of nuance and subtlety, and it isn't such a traditional, you know, like he's into her, which is how it is in the stage show. He's not necessarily, he's not really into her romantically. It's sort of a thing that almost happens by accident in some weird way in the movie, which I much prefer. It's such a interesting, like, different, especially when you think about 1971, 1972, whenever it was.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think like
1972.
The book and the movie give it this like space for realism in terms of these people not being sure if they can like be best friends or not and have that be normal, and also this like gay man who, or at least Isherwood is gay. I feel like
he's
the character
gay now,
is
but
a little
this
bit
was
more ambiguous.
Right. Well, he's sort of like confused or exploring a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's really necessary to sort of understand the tension and why it feels weird when they thrust themselves into this commitment, into this lifelong commitment. It makes a little bit more sense when it's less like, oh, we're just two messy love interests with all this drama and emotional tension going around us. And it makes a little bit more sense when it's more like, this is the fundamental like layout of the characters, is that they have this understanding and really enjoy each other's company.
Right.
And it can't be perfect.
Well, and so
it doesn't work if they try to like make it a little bit more that way.
But then in the stage show, like when they have that moment where she's like, we can't stay together for the kid, but like you almost have like the film, you do have a party that's like, I do feel like they could just like stay together forever as these like close friends and like kind of, and they do, even if like that's like its own beautiful. So it really is heartbreaking when she sings Cabaret. When she sings Cabaret, it's in the movie especially, it's like you like, it's saying goodbye to this like beautiful thing you've seen blossom and then die, and it's because he wants to step out of this existence of not engaging with what's happening, and you know, like the march of whatever is all around him, and she wants to double down and go further in, and it's that two levels of tragedy, because you have both the personal tragedy of the relationship, and then and this is the other cool thing about the work, is that it doesn't have to do too much. You know, you don't have to like have Nazi banners everywhere. You can have one armband. You can have one person show an armband, and it's like, that's a huge shift. And so you're coming at it from the audience knowing the perspective of history, and knowing that not only is she making the wrong choice for herself, but it's like, this is like, it's this attitude that, and so that's why I think it's funny that Cabaret is this standard, like that people sing, and it's like, yeah, but I'm like, it's one of those musical theater numbers that's like the character is singing, and it's like you as the audience supposed to know that they are full of shit on some level.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Like in some versions, like Sally Bowles is literally like crying as she's singing in the number.
Right.
Like a lot of the cutesy stuff that happens in the first Cabaret numbers, like kind of breaks down and becomes ugly and gross.
And that's why Liza's Cabaret. So, and this is the other interesting thing about Sally in the movie versus in the stage show, is that traditionally in the stage show, at least in most like big productions, they kind of want her to be like a mediocre talent. Like they don't like she's supposed to kind of be like shouty and like personality and like bubbly British like heiress kind of ridiculous or whatever, but not like a great singer. And I think that so Liza's Cabaret is so good because it's incredibly well performed, but like you feel like her heart like as she's like performing the fuck out of it, you know, like the harder she's performing, it's like the harder, and the more that she's like killing it, it's like the more she's running away from like her actual like emotional reality and like just like hiding away or something. It's so good.
A different context, so like, you know, her being like, oh, like I'm gonna like make it in the world as an actress, I'm gonna pursue all these things. You know, if she's mediocre, and that's tragic, but if she's actually like really good, but it's destroying her, it's also like this is a time that is so like difficult that even if she's the best, she's not going to make it.
Right. Well, and you
Which
know
then
what's
adds the parts of like why she's like sleeping with people be more meaningful. Like she can do everything, and it would never be enough.
and so in the Sam Mendes revival, the way that it ends, the very, very end of the show, is well, actually, I don't like some of the stuff, some of like the montagey stuff that kind of happens at the end. But the very, very last moment is so the MC's been kind of like cutesy and doing his usual cutesy MC thing, and we can get into the MC in a bit. But he and then Alan Cumming, you know, takes off this big overcoat and he's wearing concentration camp. You know, whatever you want to call that uniform, and he has Jewish star, pink triangle, like I don't know, there's a red star. I don't know what that maybe is communist or something. I don't know what the red star meant historically, but and like that's like the other level is you're like, yeah, this party's not going to go longer. Like all these people you're performing, like or a lot of these people you're performing with are going to be like, it's all going to change. Like you can't just kind of like just hide away from history, I guess. And so that's like part of another one of the reasons that I'm really glad we're talking about this right now is because I feel like, you know, it's really relevant, and it's relevant to the discussion of just musicals in general, and sort of something I've talked about is musicals have the power to be a force for good and a force for evil. And I think Cabaret is definitely a force for good. But it's a story about that, I think, and when we do entertainment that is either strictly to distract or, you know, hide away from real problems, which I think, hey, I could list a few right now. That's not good, and like this is sort of the cost of that. Like this is what, you know, joining in on the joke and just like having like keeping the party going. I don't know.
And that's kind of what makes it work so well. Is at the beginning it's so funny, and it like introduces all of these sort of clues, and I don't know how it historical vibes, the feeling of the moment, like very subtly through these small moments, as we said before. So you don't feel like at the beginning you're just like, oh, I'm gonna be watching a movie that's like at the end, like, thanks, you did a Holocaust. Like it balances that in a way that
no, and in fact, and I
should
think
not fit for musical theater, frankly.
Well,
like
and I think that's
really hard to cover that sort of thing in musical theater.
Hearing you talk about what the book sort of covered and how it was only at the very, very end that it's like actually Nazis in the streets, or like not like in the street, like, but that's like the very, very end that starts happening. And I think that actually kind of is captured in the film with that the end of the movie isn't, you know, Hitler is like now like marching, and then there's like you're seeing the world descend. No, it's the very, very beginning still, because it's the MC, who's this great specter that just haunts the entire film, even though he's in it like way less than he's in the stage show. Just like he's such a presence. And Joel Grey, oh my god, I love Joel Grey. Is so fucking good in this movie. And he just sings his "Auf Wiedersehen, a bientôt," blah blah blah, and then it's a slow pan as the drum, like sort of the cymbal, is like louder, 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 and it's a slow pan across this warped mirror that has been used throughout the movie to kind of show like especially to reflect the MC a lot, to kind of like make him more and more into like a ghoul kind of character almost, and it's reflecting the audience in this like weird kind of like a wavy like effect through the mirror, and then you just pick out 1, 2, 3 brown shirts with the like red, and then like, and it's this like dread, and it's like, and that's all you need, because you fill in the rest. Like, this is a musical that really knows that you are going to bring so much to this.
And they foreshadow it too with like towards the beginning, there's like that really rowdy brown shirt, and one of the club managers kicks him out. And the camera follows this. It's like sort of sprinkled in throughout a musical number or something, him being an asshole and then getting literally like marched up the stairs and thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's like the only brown shirt in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time of that closing shot, you're looking around and there's like 1/5 of the people in that shot are all wearing armbands.
Yeah.
And
that's all you need to see. Like, and it's terrifying. I mean, like, it's just really so strong. Like, that's the thing, is when, like, yeah, like you said it earlier, and I said it right at the beginning, that like, but I'm like, musical theater is good. Actually, people are like, name a good musical. I'm like, this is one of the first ones I'm gonna go with, because and it's that classic thing where the central, like, whatever you want to call it, the central thing of this whole concept of the show is so strong and has such a clear reason to be told at basically any time. A very important kind of emotional message to convey, really, not to get too hoity-toity about it, that it can support. And this is another thing that I love about musicals, is that you aren't upset about remakes. You love a new take on it. It can support, Michelle Williams also being Sally Bowles, or Alan Cumming owning the MC just as much as Joel Grey.
Yeah.
Like, those are just as iconic of performances, and it can support them both, like, because it's the musical itself is so strong, and like, it's such a good example of that. I don't know. I to me, this is what, in summation, it's good, actually. I think is where,
I agree.
Is where I come to on this.
I would say it's great.
Yeah, no, it's truly one of the best. I think it might be the best movie musical. I'm struggling to think if there's one that's better. I mean, the only one that I would put above it, and this is the last thing I'll say, my closing thought, just to bring it back to Fosse, is, you're exactly right, Henry. It's like, it's so relevant, and it always will be, but especially right now. I mean, especially, the way things are going all the time, and, I know that Papa Joe and Mamala are gonna save us or whatever, but I don't know. There's still a lot of shit happening, and Fosse, like, it's a great. I consider it Fosse's real first film. Like, because this is when Fosse becomes Fosse, and Fosse Verdon. I again always recommend that, but he's about being so real. A really great story that's in the Fosse Verdon. Cabaret is a very different show than a chorus line cinema challenge. Oh my god!
I do like a chorus line, though.
I'm not very up on a chorus line. I don't know it too well besides the big ones. So Fosse is both so real. Oh yeah, the fun story that's in Fosse Verdon is when he gets there and they show like the guests in the club. He doesn't like any of the casting that they're doing, and he's like, "Can you take me to like the nearest brothel?" Basically, and they go to this like German brothel, and he meets with all the girls and like tells them what the scene is, and just basically to make them just in the crowd, and they're like, "Is anybody like into it?" And they're all fine with it, and then like he's like, "Okay." And he picks out like 2 of them, and he's like, you, and it's like the 2 like hottest ones basically, and he's like, you, I don't need, everybody else. He's like, just wanted all like the like all of these prostitutes to like fill it out. So he like really like gets in, and he wanted that like gritty realism, and like he kept having to fight with the studio and the producers to like they're like, it's so dark. Why is it always so dark in this club? It's supposed to be a big musical. He's like, no, it's like fucking gritty, and it's like that's important. And he fought for all that.
The makeup in the movie is so good.
Mm-hmm.
I
yes.
also appreciate that they like don't erase that, like, you know, there were like lots of like trans people and drag queens in that scene at the time,
Right.
which was like erased from history for
Yeah.
decades before it got sort of, I don't know, back into the representation of Weimar. It's
Yeah. So anyway, Fosse was a genius for this, and I think that this was when he came into his own. And if you liked this and you haven't seen All That Jazz, have you seen All That Jazz?
I know the show. I haven't seen the film.
It's not really even a show because it hasn't really done a full stage. It's a film first, but
I know the song All That Jazz.
Oh yeah, that's from Chicago.
Is there like a review? I feel like
no. So
there's a review.
There's Fosse. Okay. Yeah, there was a review called Fosse that Anne Ray.
Okay, that's what I know it from.
And that has and actually there are some songs from All That Jazz that are in that review that are from the movie, but that is a brilliant movie because it's literally Fosse's autobiography in film, because it's all about the period after Cabaret came out, and he was doing Pippin and editing another movie, and or no, it was Chicago or whatever it was. He was like, and he was doing all these things at once, and he's on all these Benzedrine or whatever, all these uppers, and his heart is like dying, and then he basically, it's all him coming to grips with like his own death and his own mortality. One of my that's the only movie that I would maybe put above it for a movie musical, but it is just a genius piece of work, and it was so great to talk about why. And we could go for hours and hours, but I've already taken so much of your time, Bingen, and this has been so awesome. Do you have anything left to say for Cabaret before we call it a night here?
I guess, like, in summation, one thing I was thinking of that I think is really well written about in the book, but maybe not so much in the musical and the movie, is the police siding with and shielding the Nazi SA gatherings, which is like especially relevant. Like when you see all like the rallies where like the Proud Boys or whatever gather, and the police just like don't touch them, but
they get treated really well.
It's really similar to the dynamic between the police pre-integration with the Nazi government and the SA and the communists.
Give me the name. Give me the name of the book again one more time, because I might.
Goodbye to Berlin.
All right, I might have to read to get all those details.
It's pretty good. It's pretty interesting. A lot of it is kind of dry, and it definitely has that kind of style of a book from the 30s or 40s or whatever. But it does have a few really special moments.
So I'm going to give that a watch. So read Goodbye to Berlin, watch Cabaret, watch All That Jazz. Okay, now here's the exciting announcement that I hyped on Twitter for our show next week. I just locked her down earlier today. One of my oldest friends in the world. Twitter verified. First Twitter verified guest. All right.
Wow.
Don't know if we have any Star Trek fans watching. My very, very close friend, oldest friend in the world, Mary Wiseman, a.k.a. Ensign Tilly from Star Trek Discovery, will be our guest next week. And what show will we be talking about? But a certain show that when I was briefly at the same college as Mary, she had on VHS, and I would get extremely, extremely high and make us watch every time, and has since been adapted into a legendary work of bad film. Of course, I am talking about Cats, the film Cats, and the show Cats. I will be talking about Cats next week.
I'm surprised it hasn't come up yet.
Oh, I mean, of course it's come up.
No, but there hasn't been a whole...
Well, I was waiting. I was thinking about what would be the good show. We've done musical. We went to high school together, so we did musicals in high school together. We did a play with music. Do you know Marat Sade? It's a really out there play. Very, very cool, weird play. We did that in college too, so I was thinking about all these different ones, and then I was like, no, it has to be Cats. It has to be
I
Cats.
assume this is the recording you're talking about, the one where it's like professionally done, but of like the original cast or whatever.
Yeah, the VHS one that came out.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's the best
Oh, it is.
version of Cats. Like,
Well-
I honestly would rather just watch that than.
And I would
I've never
say,
seen Cat, but it's like a perfect compromise
say
in
for
weirdness and catsness.
circling back to like an hour ago, Sweeney Todd, if you have not seen the original production with Angela Lansbury and George Hearn, that video, find that. Watch. You're gonna wanna. That's my wife sneezing. You're gonna watch that. It's fine though. We've been going a while here, Bingen.
Yeah.
And I really, really loved this talk. This was awesome. It's great talking to you. So yeah, everybody. Hey, thanks for the bits, Party Cockroach. Appreciate it. So yeah, just come back next week. We're going to be talking about Cats. And then the week after that, we're going to have my first return guest, my other best friend in the world. My other best friend. They were literally both my best men at my wedding. So it's equal here. It's always weird to talk about this. But so Alex Kleiner, who was with us when we talked about Rent and Book of Mormon, he's going to be coming back in 2 weeks because we are going to review the Netflix original movie musical, The Prom, which, check out that trailer. Just give that trailer a watch. We're going to review that right like a couple of days after it drops. So that'll be fun. And I'm also working on, I just started reading, literally, I haven't really started, the book about Spider-Man the musical. And so that's in the works as well. So a lot of exciting things in the pike over the next few weeks. And then I'm going to take a little bit of time off, for the holidays and New Year and all that. But December's going to be awesome. And yeah, Cabaret is like maybe the last great show that's going to be talked about for a while, and I'm sorry about that. We will return to doing great shows again eventually. But thank you everybody again for being here. This is the best. Bingen, it was so much fun talking to you. And see everybody later. I love you. Goodbye.